Welcome back to the watch, everyone, to this unscheduled impromptu stream discussion that I'm going to be having with a gentleman that goes by the title, the Aristocratic Utensil. Classic title. Now, this is going to be an interesting discussion for me because it's going to be talking a bit about, I guess, political theory, but I consider myself mostly a normie on subjects like this. But I have been having interesting thoughts about some of the problems that we are facing in the modern day does actually seem to come from the liberal mindset. And an individual that's actually been kind of very vocal and critical of liberalism is the gentleman that I'll be having the discussion with, the Aristocratic Utensil, hence the purpose of doing this stream. We just kind of met each other on the Flashcast and is like, hey, I've seen a couple of your videos, and we chatted, and I just mentioned that, I'd be interested in picking your brain a little bit. Maybe he can help me out, flesh out some, questions I have. And I can also share my perspective that I have a bit about this because, well, let's get right into it, okay? And so without further ado, bringing on the Aristocratic Utensil. How are you, Spoon?
Yes, good morning, sir. I'm well. It's hot as balls here.
It's hot over here. Thank goodness someone else is on the southern bloody hemisphere and knows my pain during it's like 40 degrees today, well, close to today.
Oh God, geez, that's rough. I think it's like 24 by me. Yeah, there we go. I have a fan next to me. If I didn't have the fan next to me, because there's the room that I'm in, there's a window on that side, and there's an entire wall is just window that I have to cover up with a curtain. And without a fan, I might die. Because damn, it is rough.
I understand that completely. But hey, let's kind of dive right into the meat of the subject. Now, as I mentioned in the intro, right? I don't consider myself a political scholar by any means, but I just approach things based on what I can try and identify as like grounded principles, and then work forward from there. And
right,
when we come to liberalism, there's a couple of elements to it that, even I feel people who consider themselves liberal would acknowledge, well, hang on, this doesn't really work. But before I even do that, what would be your kind of definition of liberalism be? Just so I can kind of see if either are on the same page or if my own kind of understanding is completely, wrong.
Well, I would say liberalism, broadly defined, is giving the citizenry the maximum amount of personal liberty.
Freedom. Yeah, maximum amount of freedom.
Yes, freedom defines liberalism.
Yes, that's kind of my understanding as well. Like when I hear liberalism, I get talked by liberals, and my understanding of it is the most amount of freedom that a person can be given. Now, when I consider that as the kind of beginning, concept that this is built up from, the question then becomes, well, okay, then how much freedom is too much? Because people who champion freedom as the ultimate thing, that everyone must be free, even they would acknowledge and even practice that they don't follow that to its furthest extent. They believe in curtailing people's freedom for basic rule of law. You don't, grant people the freedom to murder. You don't grant, we try to prevent it and punish people who exercise, unrestrained freedom and doing anything they want, right?
Yeah. No, if you look at that concept of, well, we give people the maximum amount of freedom, it doesn't actually mean anything. If you just think about it, well, what do people do with their freedom? That's essentially what you're asking. And then from that, basically, once you start extrapolating that into what that actually means is functional, then you realize what you say of I glorify freedom, it actually means nothing. Because freedom in this sense is just absent of an external restraint. Okay, well, every society has restraints. So what separates one society from another is what those restraints are for and what they ultimately do. Then you realize freedom doesn't actually mean anything. Freedom is just how much leeway are you giving your society and why. So that's then what makes your society then.
Yeah, well, the way that you kind of described then, how much leeway do you give your society? I think that's a perfectly, logical way to kind of describe it. You could still call that, granting people's freedoms, essentially.
Yeah.
But then it's like, as how much? And you get into muddy, convoluted waters when it comes up to like, who are the people who will then determine what rights individuals have, and what, the role of government, how much power should they have to restrain the freedoms of individuals, and all those, elements that kind of branch off from it. But bringing it back to that idea about, okay, it's about freedom, all right, and then it raises, I want to bring it back to the question, okay, how much freedom is too much freedom? Because when we look at the world today, especially the woke movement, it seems to be very liberal in the sense that you must allow someone the freedom to do what makes them happy, unrestrained, even if it's self-destructive. And when I say self-destructive, almost like to an objective level, that, hang on, we can see that there's a pattern of behavior that is objectively self-destructive, right? It raises an interesting question then about, should people have now, I don't know the answer to this question, okay? I'm just throwing it out there. Should people have the right, the freedom to engage in behaviors that are objectively self-destructive?
I would say no.
You would say no?
No.
See,
it always boils down to who should check that.
Yeah.
Because if you look at sort of what the wokies believe, I don't actually think it's freedom. I think they just wish to impose an order.
Well, what's interesting with the woke mindset is that they take the freedom, whereas like, okay, I can pursue happiness when I say unrestrained, there's the common restraints, and usually the main restraint that people would apply to this concept of maximal freedom is so long as you don't impact the freedom or the safety of another individual. And so usually people say you should be granted that level of freedom, and even if it ends up harming yourself, as long as it doesn't harm other people. But what I find people of the woke mindset do, they take that and then they say, okay, I am going to be living my life in this direction that I believe is going to bring me happiness. Now you must acknowledge it also. And if you do not acknowledge my lifestyle and the way I'm practicing my things, that it will lead to happiness, you're a bigot, and you should be cancelled and everything like that. And of course, the biggest manifestation that I've seen about this is the trans movement and gender identity. That if you do not acknowledge someone's gender identity, you are denying their
Humanity, yeah.
Humanity, exactly. You're erasing their existence. They take it to that level, which is bonkers to me, because that's then them imposing their beliefs, which is restricting other people's freedom to believe what they want. But it seems like this idea of, hang on, if you do not acknowledge my lifestyle, my liberal life, you are now, how dare you, you're restricting my liberal life as a result, which is bonkers. But that seems to be one of the end states of the woke ideology.
Yeah, I would say is one thing that I don't like that people do is they go, here's an accepted rule book, that's how we should behave, and they start pointing at the hypocrisy of other people. And I go, yeah, the hypocrisy model only works with you because these are your values. They don't give a crap about your values.
Yeah, well,
so if someone doesn't adhere to your values, there's no point in you trying to dunk on them with what you believe. That's something that I would wish people move away from, because if you just look at them, what are they actually trying to do? They're just trying to use raw power and shove it down your throat. And then they try to chastise you because you are not adhering to the values that you espouse by essentially dunking on them. And they try to flip it back down on you. I would just say, if you just look at, they're trying to use state power to wield it against you. So if we go, okay, you are more than happy to use state power to shove your worldview down my throat. Okay, so why do I listen to anything you have to say? I'm just going to do the same thing and you can choke on it.
Well, that is the interesting thing, is because ultimately, right, at the end of the day, the only way to actually impose any type of kind of moral standard on society is through state power. I mean, the other way is through discussion and conversion. When I say conversion, I'm talking about
religion used to be the old one, yes.
Exactly. That's literally how my religion has always been presented and taught. And now I'm a Latter-day Saint. Mormon is a shorthand, right? And I've actually dedicated most of my life to spreading this ideology because I think it leads to the most maximal happiness that people could find. That's what I found in my life. And the way that I was a missionary for 2 years for my church, and the way that it was done was through invitation and discussion and persuasion, never with coercion, force, or the sword. And that's kind of laid the foundation that is just like in my mind, it's the natural instinct that I have that if you're ever wanting to spread what you think is true ideology, it needs to be through persuasion and discussion. But that's not what the woke movement that have been doing. They've been like, no, we're going to impose it. And first they've tried to impose social justice, which is social consequences. And it starts with public shame, jeering, belittlement, browbeating, and insults, right? And then they take it a step further and they try and get power through any type of organization, either through your employment, and then they push it, of course, also to state power. So we're going to impose that any discussion, speech against my ideology now is hate speech, and they're going to get the government to impose hate speech laws and just call it hate speech, and therefore anything that offends me, I can define as hate speech and get you punished under the law as a result.
Yeah, I kind of like that part.
You like that part?
Well, yeah, because the reason I said I like that is because what the left are very good at is recognizing how humans actually work. This is something that the left does very well. They're very good at disguising what they're actually doing because they have this belief, oh, everybody's equality and free and all this nonsense. But if you look at how they actually organize and structure, they are militantly hierarchical, they have deference to power, and they're very obedient. That's the reason why they work so well, is because they're very orderly. The right, on the other hand, are elitist in theory, but in practice, they try to uphold the values of democracy, which is why it doesn't work. Because you can't uphold those values. Like you give everyone freedom and everyone can have the little slice of the pie. Like, no, that's not how humans work. How humans actually work is they have a deference to authority. And if you tell them what to believe and obey, they actually will.
Well,
especially if there's like a function to it.
This is an aspect of discussion that I actually find quite intriguing because nearly everything, that I like see in life, especially politics and stuff, I always want to pass it through the lens of my own faith and religion and see, how it weighs up. That's the most prominent,
Yeah, because that's normal.
Yeah, well, it's the core of my belief structure. And what I find interesting about this idea about imposing a moral standard, or when I say imposing, there's multiple ways in which something could, be imposed, right? But growing up in my faith, my church, right? The church has always had a very, very strict moral standard, okay? And an expectation and encouragement that if you're a member of this church, you've done something quite significant, because entry into membership is you make a covenant where you will keep God's commandments. That's what the baptismal covenant is. And after that, there is an expectation that you're going to be keeping those covenants. And so there's actually worthiness interviews that you have with the bishop, discussing about how well you're keeping that covenant, you're keeping the commandments. And then if you transgress, sin, a serious one, there are repercussions, but not state imposed or anything like that. The ultimate, penalty is excommunication. And I find that interesting because excommunication is basically saying, okay, by your practices and the way that you live, you have proven yourself that you are not part of this tribe, because this tribe expects a moral standard for you to adhere to. And if you don't do that, you are not worthy to be a member of it. You can still come. We're going to encourage you to try and live up to that standard again. But this idea of having a moral standard that you expect people to live up to, okay, in my experience throughout my entire life, has been profoundly beneficial for who I am and the individual and the standards that I live by. Now, I'm not saying it can't go wrong, where like people can impose a form of unrighteous dominion where they're enforcing it too much, and that pushes people away. But the encouragement to always do better and live to a higher moral ideal has been profoundly beneficial in my life, where the concept of liberalism seems to be almost the antithesis of that, where you have no right to expect anyone to live up to any standard because it's their freedom to live whatever the hell that they want. And it almost destroys the very idea of, well, just objective morality. And if you don't even want to believe in objective morality, just good moral standards that we have found through practice benefit society. It seems like liberalism, like when taken to its furthest end, says that is bigotry, basically. Any thoughts that you wanted to share just on what I was talking about here?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think where liberalism goes wrong in the modern world is, okay, no offense to our American counterparts, but it is like it is a very commercialized form of liberalism that America has unfortunately exported, all for the sake of materialism. And I really blame the equality doctrine for this, which is that all differences between people can be boiled down so that we can just make a happy group of consumers. That is what essentially the West is trying to do right now to its population, which is why there's just like a horde of people all over the world coming to European civilizations and just ruining it because they can just say, oh, look, everyone's equal, and they can just assimilate. And like, yeah, that's not how the world works. Like, the moral code is defined by the people in the civilization. It's not like they just go to like another land and get years zeroed by magic soil. But that is essentially how the West looks at the world. It's like, oh, look, if you don't like these people who have nothing in common with you, then you're a racist. It's like, this is completely new, and by any historical standards, is completely insane.
And you're kind of mentioning about cultures there, because look, I'm at a point, especially with extremist Islamic terrorism and stuff like that, where it is quite blatant that there are absolutely incompatible cultures. But not only that, obvious incompatible ideologies. I get really almost pissed. Well, I get pissed off, right? When I see people who do not believe in, say, certain principles of liberalism, even, but freedom, right to vote, right? Using those mechanisms to push ideologies that are the exact opposite of the mechanisms they're using to promote it. For instance, communism, like, how many people have the right to vote under communism, yet they're wanting to use a democratic process to impose communism? And to me, that is like completely incompatible, right? And I'm at a point where it's like, okay, how about we start to hold people to their own standards? If there are people who are trying to push an ideology that would take away people's rights and take away, say, their right to vote, in my mind, you don't even deserve to vote at that point. But you deserve to live by your own standard. And so, yeah, I kind of see more of that they're obviously incompatible ideologies and incompatible cultures, and forcing them together results in, well, some really horrible stuff, of course,
the Western power bloc, as in our political class, seems to think that, oh, look, if we just bring in other people, they will be like us. And again, like, no, that's not how humans work. When humans go to different lands in mass groups, they take their culture and grow it. They don't assimilate. Yeah. Assimilation is nonsense. That doesn't ever work. Ever. Well, people assimilate.
Yeah, I think the important caveat there is in mass, right? Because
yes, is scale.
We've seen on many occasions when people do move countries, everything, and well, it's funny when it's in a lower scale, right? Oftentimes they're forced to assimilate because they have no other choice. They can't communicate with anyone else. But if they have a large enough group where they can make these own, separate kind of communities where they speak their original language and practice their original, cultures and things like that, assimilation can then become impossible, basically, because they simply refuse to. But on a small scale, I think that it can work, especially if you don't have a welfare state where it encourages people to come over and then look after themselves, and that, you know, encourages building a life for themselves and industry and things. But that does open up a whole different discussion, I guess.
Yeah. But I would say as far as the people and the incompatibility is concerned, is people think like culture is malleable, and I don't agree. I think culture is intrinsically tied to race. I don't think that's a bad thing. That's just how people grew up. Like the concept of mass traveling that we have in the 21st century, by historical standards, is just insane. Like you can't just go to a different part of the world in a matter of hours. Like people have always been part of their groups for most of human history. Like the amount of change in the last like 150 years is like a huge leap in like,
crazy. It is bonkers.
I think if I tell people like I would say the biggest jump in human evolution as far as society is concerned is radio. And people don't think about it like this, but if I tell you, for almost all of human history, it is literally impossible to hear somebody's voice outside of earshot, and now you can do it across continents. That's insane. Like you don't understand like how massive a jump that is as far as communication is concerned. Throw in the car, throw in air travel, boats. Like holy shit! You can't actually understand how massive a jump that is. And now, for all of human history, you have no idea what other civilizations look like unless you travel through them, which takes freaking weeks because you're traveling by boat. And now through the internet, you can see it. So the level of exposure has massively radicalized human minds in a very, very short amount of time. And I don't really think humans are quite capable of dealing with that. It is such a massive change through most of human history. I think like there's something fundamentally wrong with this idea of anyone can be anyone just through travel and like a bit of cultural differences. Like you're ignoring like literally centuries of, well, in some cases, lack of human development, morality, technological development. Just you can't make anyone be exactly the same. It's the one thing that defines our time, I think, is just blank slate theory. Like everyone is a machine that can just be updated with like firmware code updates. Like, no, that's evidently completely insane. Like the reality is people are not the same. People are different. Genetics, heritage, lineage is real. I mean, you can just see this. Someone who farms 8 generations of farming, guess what they're really good at? Farming. Like, you can't just take people in and out and exchange them and think, oh, look, the civilization is going to survive with like a completely different, genetic group of people. Like, no, that's completely crazy by any historical standard. Like, if you wish your civilization to survive, you need the people who made it to continue it, because that's just normal.
Well, going back on the idea about, I guess, comparative cultures, right? And that the woke mindset will find it so offensive to say that one culture is superior to another culture, right?
It depends what the culture's for.
Well, there's that as well. But from even a Christian, like from a Christian perspective, religious perspective, like to me, wouldn't that be obvious from that belief structure? Because from a Christian perspective, you have to fundamentally believe that the culture of Christianity is superior to all other cultures. Otherwise, why are you trying to spread it? Okay. There'd be no point if you like the fundamental core of it. And that's kind of exactly how I was raised, that the beliefs of this church will bring more happiness to other people because it is better. And, I don't think it's a hot take to say that. I'd say the culture the Aztecs had was pretty awful. It's like human sacrifice, a lot of horrible primitive practices, barbaric practices. I don't look at the Aztecs and think noble savage. I'm sorry, right? I see savage. And that is not a culture that should be considered or held up on a pedestal and regarded in any equal measure to cultures that actually have far greater morality, baked into it, right?
Yeah, I have sort of mixed feelings about that kind of mentality. Not because spreading Christianity as bad or anything. But my friend Scrump, I was discussing this with him, and he made an interesting. He had an interesting perspective on Christianity and Europeans, because normally the perspective is the reason why Europeans are great is because of Christianity. And he said, no, the reason why Christianity is great is because it's made by Europeans. And the reason why the religion is the way it is because the genes are compatible with the people who have that religion, which is why if you spread it, you can't get the moral code exactly of Europeans as you would spreading it to other people. Which is true.
Yeah.
Like if you look at other places in the world that's like massively Catholic, but the violence is still out of control.
Okay, well, this is a contrast, I guess, because I occupy a branch of Christianity that a lot of Christians are vehemently opposed to even being called Christian. It's, I'm a Latter-day Saint, but as a result, because I occupy this kind of thing that is atypical amongst many Christian religions. We are actually quite critical of certain aspects of Christianity through the Middle Ages, and we actually consider it during Great Apostasy. But basically, what I'm saying there is that absolutely, I think there are flaws to the way Christianity has been practiced through history that doesn't lead to the most optimal outcomes. Absolutely, I agree with that. And so I think it certainly helps, especially if it's like, for me, it's when Christianity is practiced properly, and that is when it's more founded correctly on the teachings of Jesus Christ. And oftentimes, when I look through history where Christianity has not been beneficial for the people, it's always because they are practicing it incorrectly, and they're doing things very contrary. But it's not to say that they couldn't look to the Bible and find justification in what they were doing. They can, okay? And so that might surprise you, where I'm actually a bit on the same page with you, even with that point that you raised there. But I certainly feel Christianity was very, very beneficial to helping, bring a higher moral standard to the world. Would you agree with that at the beginning point, or would you think it's more it's more of a different cultural kind of result? You think it was more the cultures that were practicing Christianity over the ideology? Because, all right, well, let me say, what's your kind of view on that?
I think people are more nature than they are nurture. I think the external interference with people, I think, is massively overrated, and I think people are way more hardwired through genetics and biology than we're willing to admit. And the only reason I say that is because the entire liberal world order that we know now is built on you can shape man through external pressure. The moment that you tell people, no, nurture is way more powerful, or nature rather is way more powerful than you think, the entire system collapses. I don't think it's because of my mustache man. I think it's because their entire worldview rests on this particular core nexus. And if you remove it, the entire thing basically collapses. And then the entire system goes haywire. Because I look at the thing with like imposing a moral order, my thing is like this. It's not just that you are imposing a value system. You need to get those people to value those values. They need to have some function. And if it's like giving people tools and saying, my civilization used these tools to create wealth. What your civilization values is the wealth. So the tools have value to you in the creation of the wealth, because that is like your end goal. But if those people don't have the same end goal, the wealth generation, giving them the tools doesn't mean jack shit.
Okay, I can see your point there, but you would agree cultures have changed over history, quite drastically so from a moral standard. What would you attribute that to if it's not a belief system that is restructuring their behavior?
Oh, no, I would say that, but I would say that you can't make them completely in your own image as much as you would like to. You can say that. I always think that imposing through the sword is better. I'm not advocating that you kill everyone who disagrees with you. I'm just saying that if you conquer a tribe in the old sense, is you need to bring them completely into your cultural standards, because if you have ones that don't assimilate, they get bigger in scale, they'll eventually try and conquer you because you humiliated them.
Well, here's an interesting point that actually almost falls in a middle ground from what we're both kind of looking at, right? Where there were large shifts in ideological belief through spreading of Christianity, say, to, all throughout Europe, really, especially the shift away from paganism in Rome, of course, when Christianity was adopted there, but also amongst the Scandinavian peoples as well. Now, what is interesting, though, the points that caused the largest shifts in ideological religious practice, right, was when the leaders of these places actually adopted the religion and then like almost imposed it as either law, sometimes even through force. Christianity has been spread through force, but especially when it's made like this is the official state religion, there suddenly becomes an expectation that the people start to follow along, where there is an aspect of force being applied that might not have been, the cause to make the leader adopt the new belief structure, but once the leader adopts it, force is sometimes then applied that then makes it far more widespread amongst the people. So what I'm kind of getting at is that the application of force to uphold a moral standard is a pretty common practice that we've seen throughout history, and it's a practice that we still follow today. Like the rule of law is imposed by force. That's how you police against crime and everything like that. And it comes back to that discussion that almost we mentioned this at the beginning, but first, before I bring it back, I just wanted to get your thoughts on what I was sharing there. Did you had any kind of counters or things to add?
No, I think that's fairly normal. I mean, people always use some version of authority to impose a moral order. You have to.
Yes.
That's how humans work. Like hierarchy is normal from a million organization. I don't know why people freak the hell out about it. I mean, literally, this is something that Cortez points out. There's two ways of structuring a society. There's hard power and soft power. There's religion and politics. It's either people have a sense of conformity, and freaking libertarians will acknowledge this as well. I mean, Hayek pointed this out, is that you need some level of conformity, otherwise the state will impose its power. That's like the ideal society is people know how to behave without any kind of pressure put on them. Because what main people that dislike is, I don't like someone telling me what to do. Like, yes, I can understand that, but you do realize when people start acting the muck, you need someone to crack the whip. If you don't want someone to crack the whip, then you need the conformity. Like, there is always that balance, whether you like it or not.
Well, yeah, I think I agree with you 100%. Like the ideal society is, absolutely. When if people could police themselves, right, control their own behavior to do the right thing, you wouldn't need government.
You wouldn't need government. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like you'd have a system of angels. Yeah, but people aren't. So you need someone to eventually crack the whip to get out of line.
Because people are imperfect. There's going to be people who do not want to follow the moral structure that society expects. Therefore, there is now a necessity for law enforcement, which means government. And I say that even as someone who is getting pretty darn black-pilled on the notion of government overall, because I'm getting really pissed off with what especially the Australian government is forcing on me as an individual. Because
I have a saying with regards to this, is that the saying, everyone is a conservative in what they know.
I haven't heard that one. I've heard the one that
one.
Yeah, well, I've heard the one where, if you're young and not a liberal, you don't have a heart, and if you're old and not a conservative, you don't have a brain.
Well, there's a truth to that. I have my own version of that, which is everyone is a libertarian for their own vice.
That's not a bad one. That is not a bad one at all, actually. Holy crap. I think I agree with that 100%.
Yeah. And the thing of it is, the people who have that attitude, they are correct. That's the thing that people like, the people who think, oh, well, I'm the exemption to the rules. Like, people think, well, that's arrogant. But they go, yeah, but there actually is an element of truth to that. Like, for example, if you are someone that can really handle your alcohol very well, and everyone around you is a piss drunk, and you drink as well, but you don't have the same behaviors, and you tell them, hey, look, you should all stop drinking. They can all look at you and go, well, you drink more than all of us. Like, why are you telling us what to do? It's like, well, you're all piss drunk and I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
True.
Yeah, I agree as well.
So
And
there is that element of
and what's funny is that I agree, even in the light of the fact that I'm a Latter-day Saint and I don't drink alcohol. But what's interesting is that I don't drink alcohol not because I think it is immoral to drink alcohol, and our religious doctrine doesn't even state that, right? We acknowledge that, yeah, Jesus Christ drank alcohol when he was alive. The reason why we don't drink alcohol as a practice is because of the potential dangers that it might lead to in the modern day, because it's so easy to be abused and so accessible and it's everywhere. Like, I'm not saying it couldn't be abused in the past, but the accessibility is so much more prevalent now that the kind of if I was to read between the lines and explain, is basically it's a bit too much of a problem in the modern day to even risk messing with. It's not to say that there aren't people who can't do it responsibly. And I have no idea if I could drink responsibly or if I could be a complete drunk and I wouldn't be able to handle it. I'm much more happy to err on the side of safety and not risk it, though, is kind of my position on it. But yeah, what you're saying is interesting, where depending on what people, I guess, are like, if in an ideal world, of course, people who, would not, should be free to drink alcohol, they're not going to abuse it and stuff like that. But it's, what about here is where we come to one of the parts that I don't have the answers for, but I'm interested in discussing it, right? Is the self-destructive aspects of freedom, when there are behaviors that we can identify that are absolutely self-destructive. At what point should we draw a line? And we do draw the line. We if you will say that, oh, no, we're in a liberal democratic society where we enshrine people's freedoms so long as it doesn't hurt other people and stuff like that, it's like, no, we draw a line that doesn't apply universally, even in our current society. And I think a good example of it is with child pornography. We absolutely draw a line that is no, don't even do that. Well, and then people like advocates for CP, right, will say, but I can do it and not harm anyone, through either digitally made whatever nonsense, right, and stuff like that. And to me, it's still such a morally repugnant practice. It's like, no, straight, flat out, no, zero tolerance. We shouldn't even allow, people flirting with it, basically going down that, because of the potential harm that it can lead to, right? And so we absolutely do impose moral standards to impose people, like restrict people's freedoms, even if it hypothetically might not hurt anyone, right?
Yeah, no, I think, see, I don't really have an answer to that, because I think there's always a balance of power and freedom with like any society. Like if you like, if you're a king, you give people freedom on the assumption that they know what to do with the power, the freedom that they have, and you give the king the freedom to exercise his power under the hopes that he doesn't abuse it. But like, the abuse of freedom in the civilians is when you start acting like morons, to the point where the people who can't use shame to reorient them back to a stable point, they go to the king, and to the king, crack the whip now because this is out of hand. And that's typically when the king would crack the whip, is because people have asked him to, or because it's actually like detrimental to his society. So that's always that's always that balance, though. I mean, this is what Cortez points out. If you want to stave off authoritarian overreach from your political elites, then you need to behave. Otherwise, that's what it's for.
Mm-hmm.
Which is true. That is just how any society runs like that. Is that if you have a society where you don't have standards imposed in some way, you don't have a society.
Well, at least absolute anarchy and absolute chaos, degenerate mess, which is kind of where we see the woke ideology push towards, is literally that, where you must acknowledge everyone's freedom to live whatever degenerate way that they want. And if you don't, you're a bigot. And then you must acknowledge that lifestyle as being of equal value as the traditional relationship that has, is the foundation of human society, which of course the nuclear family. Okay. And that's where I kind of get also ticked off, is where they say, no, not only must you acknowledge it as equivalent to the traditional, relationship, you have to celebrate it. It is something to be of more, celebration than the traditional thing. And it goes to the extreme that any type of media that is promoting the traditional family is bigotry because it's not inclusive. Like, we've literally seen examples of that, where woke ideological activists lose their mind because a McDonald's ad had a mother, father, and a child enjoying eating McDonald's, and they lost their mind at it because it was bigotry for not being inclusive. It's insane. But
yeah. See, but I have a sort of different perspective when it comes to this concept of like freedom and authority. I've tried to have this discussion with Americans because once you tell people, because I've heard Americans always like bark at the idea of monarchy and an authoritarian government. And I've said to them, what does authoritarian mean to you? Because I've often asked people, is authoritarian the structure or is authoritarian the action? Because as far as I can tell, when it's authoritarian by structure, it's one person with no checks and balances. Like, okay, I can understand that. But then tell me, how the hell do you think somehow having more state actors with more power just dispersed is somehow not going to abuse it? How the hell does that make sense?
Well, I mean, we've seen some very big examples of abuse recently.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing that I just find so just baffling. So what you think one person can't do benevolently, you think more people are somehow going to check each other and not do. Like,
yeah,
that's complete bonkers, right? And as far as then the opposite end of is it by action? Well, then you do realize if a whole bunch of people are malevolent with power, they're still going to act in an authoritarian way and do bad shit, regardless of how many people are in the state. Like, what you're actually annoyed by as a person in the West is not the structure of government. You hate the people in it. You think the people are weak and susceptible to corruption, and they're just morally inferior people compared to like their forebears. Which is true. Like, that is the main thing we don't like about the West, is that the fact that our leaders are weak. They're not strong. They're not impressive people. They suck. Look at them and go like, why are you such like a money-hungry, corrupt asshole? Why do you have no moral fiber? You have no backbone. We hate them because they're weak, not because they're corrupt. I mean, it's sort of both, like the one leads to the other.
Yeah. And just to address chat, yes, Oz, it's good to see you, mate. The thing is, I'm focusing on the discussion, and so I'm missing most of the chat, unfortunately. But I appreciate everyone who's here and listening, and I'm sure I'll be able to chat with about this with Oz later on at some point. Okay, going back to what you're saying, right? My views on democracy is that it's kind of one of the best of the worst options we have. Like, it's the most workable system so far. But when I say workable, right, I actually think, right, if I'm going through my list of what I think the best systems of government are that lead to the most, I guess, justice, you could say freedoms for individuals and stuff like that, it's always filtered through my religious, lens. The top one is when I say theocracy, it's not within what people think, where it's a theocracy that a religion is running the government. The ultimate theocracy, is what most Christians would are hoping for to happen, is when Christ will reign and rule upon the earth as ruler, basically, and it's going to be a theocracy under Jesus Christ. And so that's the ultimate best government, of course. Underneath that, right, might surprise people, I actually think the next best option is actually monarchy under a righteous ruler. I actually think that leads to the most, I guess.
That's what everyone actually wants. Like if you were to look at how people behave with politics, especially when there's like a prime minister or a president elected, everyone looks at the executive like it's a king.
They do.
What is the one thing everyone wants any prime minister or any kind of newly elected person to do? Is to wreck the bureaucracy. Everyone hates like the bureaucratic apparatus of their governments. Everyone hates the fact that like you see and think like this person is now elected to do the will of the people, and then you get these morons who go like, well, this particular person who's just elected is going to have a whole bunch of problems enacting policies. It's like, why is that a thing? Why is there a class of people who are going to inhibit what the person who just fucking ran on actually stop him to do? Why is that? Like, isn't your job to be the representative of the will of the people? If the majority of the will of the people put this person in power and there's less jackasses that voted for you than this dude, why the hell are you standing in the way of this person who had more people elected into power than you? How does that make sense?
And what's interesting, even like the bureaucracy that exists in so many countries restricts so many things being done, especially carrying out justice. It becomes such a convoluted, slow process. Look at the fraud that has been coming out in America, and everyone is saying, "Well, this is all happening under the governor's watch, right? This guy looks to be guilty of treason, allowing all this to happen, and is like." We have seen atrocities happen, like in terms of how, travesties of justice being transpired, right? And no one gets punished for it. And they just keep getting away with it again and again, fraud out the constantly. And we're seeing so little people, actually charged because there is this bureaucratic system that protects so many people that are so blatantly guilty of massive crimes on a state level. In contrast to this, right? The British King Edward Longshanks, King Edward, right? At one point, he found out that many of the people who were minting the currency were only were diluting the gold in the coins and shimming a bit off, keeping it for themselves, and they were practicing fraud to rob the money of the government, the people, for themselves. Interesting, like there's parallels that we might draw from practices of fraud to steal money from the taxpayer as to what's happening in the modern day. Do you know what Edward did in response to all of that, right?
Hammer a whole bunch of them.
He executed every single one, like straight. Like he caught. It was this big audit, counseling, caught all the people that were doing it, and just instantly executed every single one. And there wasn't a problem with it for many years after that. It's like, when now I'm not saying Edward is a good king, by the way. That's a complex subject in the matter of history. He was very good for England. I'm not saying he was.
Well, that's yeah. Well, I would say like if he's the king of England and he does well by his nation, he's a good king. You can say like, well, by my standards, he was an absolute asshole. Like, yeah, but you're not living under his reign.
Well, yeah.
If you're there massacring everyone that is making your country hell, by that standard, he would be a good king. Even if he's an authoritarian by like today's standards. If the time of like, this is what justice looks like in my time, and I did that, and the people cheered, you're a good king.
Well, that's the thing. The people who would be saying that, like Edward being this like authoritarian dictator, that would be the Scottish. The Scottish hated Edward Longshanks. That's the whole Braveheart, all that stuff. But from the English perspective, Edward was a really successful king for the English, like protecting their borders, expanding their empire, and things like that. I'm not talking about the moral standards here. I'm talking about him, serving his own people.
See, but that's like where moral relativism like actually has a sort of function. Is because you're asking like, what is the morality of a good reign of king? Well, like, well, if you're someone who is under his heel and you're not English, he was like, well, he's an asshole because he oppressed me. But then the people who are English, like, yeah, but he expanded my empires. He expanded the empire, and I hate you. So to me, he's good. So it kind of depends on like why are you cheering his rule? And if it's because he expanded it and made it wealthier for me, of course you're going to like him. If he's kicking your ass, you're not going to. That's fairly understandable. There is two sides of the same coin. It's just like, why do you like him? It depends on what you value in your king.
So my kind of view is when you have like an actual righteous king, he's going to exercise his power justly and work to protect the,
Well, you'd hope so anyway.
Well, that's what I would feel would be one of the definitions of a righteous king. If he's not doing this to not protect the rights of his people and being just, he wouldn't be a righteous king then. The flaw, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts because I'm not sure there's an answer necessarily for it, right, is that you can't ensure always getting a righteous king. That's where you run into some big problems? What's your kind of, because would you consider yourself a monarchist? Like that's the
yes.
How do you approach the problem of you can't guarantee always having a good king then? Because bad kings can ruin a nation. Yeah.
Oh yeah, but like that's any government.
Well,
that's not just susceptible to kings. Yeah, it always just makes me. What if a king is bad? It's like you do realize that's every government ever.
Yeah.
What if the civilians are shit? Like, yeah, that's a reality. That you're gonna have to live through that. I always find this the really weird thing. Everyone is very democracy brained, which is that what if the king is bad? It's like, dude, you don't even prop up the politicians you vote for now. So it's like there's always just like we the people have to do something. Like you the people never do shit. Like this is just the reality of human cycles. Is you will get bad people, you will get good people. It's just the luck of the draw, whether you like it or not. There's not much you can do about it.
Yeah, I mean, like if you found a really, really good king, like a solid, like one of the best kings you've ever had, I would be perfectly happy for that king to have the power to appoint the heir, right? That is not necessarily tied to bloodline, his children. But if he's a properly good king and has enough discernment to be able to find someone who has the merit to fill the role, and then he works to train them in the role to, then succeed him, I'd be fine with that. Like, as one potential way. And if he misjudges and the king is bad, well, I like what you raise is a fair point. Is like that's the same with our current governments. Like I have a friggin' awful prime minister here in Australia that is just infuriating. Like this guy, don't get me started. Don't get me started on.
Yeah, I think the family model of lineage and heritage is sort of what's missing in the West. Because people tend to like the family model and they like the idea of, because it works, whether people like it or not. People always try to mess with like the functionality. Something I've noticed is that our society is very technocratic in the sense that everything works with like graphs and numbers, and the spiritual aspect of it is basically completely absent. Like I look at sort of the concept of honor and duty basically doesn't exist in our society. It's just like live free, die young, consume as much as possible, die. It's like that's not how civilization runs in the long term.
I agree. It seems like that is far more prevalent in the modern day than it is. It doesn't exist in my sphere and my culture and stuff, because the concept of honor and duty, that I was raised on that, and it still exists, but the mainstream is becoming so selfish. Yeah, like consumers. Yeah, just it's all about their own pleasure, their own joy, and if anyone expects any type of behavior, that means sacrificing their own, pleasure.
It's because it's universal. That's why.
Universal mean like I think because people are inherently lazy, and you can see how people naturally fall into that viewpoint, because people enjoy pleasure, they dislike pain, they dislike hard work, and so when people are lazy and they're not actively working on themselves to live up to a moral standard, that's the inevitable result. People will naturally fall into just lazy pursuit of hedonism. And I think most people, unless they're really taught to the moral standard, will actually end up falling into that. And that's what we're seeing in a large scale today. And the modern world enables it a lot, because the modern world is really luxurious.
It's convenient,
like, crap. Super convenient. Like, holy crap. Spoon? I don't even have to get up off my ass to change the channel on my TV. I can sit there and just press a button and it magically changes for me. And holy crap, it's getting worse, Spoon. My wife installed lights that I don't even need to get up off my ass to turn off. I can just say, hey, Alexa, turn off the lights. And they turn off now. The world is enabling me.
It's creepy.
More and more lazy. It's incredible.
Yeah. I found that the smart thing very creepy. Because people say, oh, well, you can turn it off. Like, how is it that I can turn something off with my voice and it can turn on with my voice? Doesn't that mean it's permanently on?
Possibly.
Also, what insane batteries is in that thing to be on permanently?
Well, the light just plugs in and gets powered through the socket, and then you have a receiver, a speaker that you can activate through command. But yeah, so because the issues with consumerism does bring up the flaws, and now I'm reluctant to talk about this because I think capitalism has been really, really good for many societies, especially overcoming poverty. But there are downsides to it. Like I don't think we have a perfect system in place, and one of the downsides is what you're saying with, say, capitalism is this consumerism laziness that it naturally breeds. Is that right?
I would think that's one of the worst, but I don't think that is the worst.
Okay, what do you think would be the worst?
I think the worst thing is that it is incredibly difficult to convince consumers that there is something that is valuable outside of raw dollar signs. Because like if capitalism is just concerned with profit, it doesn't care about things like heritage, clan, kin, or anything. Like it just wants more bodies because it just seeks customers.
Yeah, it essentially doesn't care about family, and to me, that's like the most important ideal.
It doesn't have values. It can't conserve values. That's capitalism's biggest problem. Is if it's just like, I remember like Ben Shapiro said this, the only color that capitalism cares about is green. Like, yeah, that's the fucking problem. There's people that care about more than just that. And the moment you realize, oh, look, if all we're concerned about is profit is just hungry for bodies and it doesn't care about anything. And that is where people start to go like, well, if all I'm concerned about is just making money, I don't care about where the money comes from. But after a while, it's like, hey, look, I have money, but my society is degenerate as hell. I don't like this. Like, well, money is the reason for that. It's because they're just chasing that. And if you want to preserve something outside of the material world, and you need to value something like your kin, your family, then all of a sudden, hey, look, if I actually want to preserve my own people, then suddenly you're some kind of Nazi. It's like, how? No, you realize wanting to preserve your own kin is completely normal. It has nothing to do with any ideology. That's just biological wiring.
Oh, well, it's the most base level. Like the most important people in my life are my family, my children, and my wife.
That's not. That's not radical. That's like all of human history. The fact that you don't wish to preserve that is the radical part. Once you look at our values outside of the present day, we look completely fucking insane, utterly batshit wacky.
Oh,
that's the one thing I would tell people if you want to like analyze politics, like look at any books prior to like the First and Second World War. It's like going back into a time capsule.
Yeah, people from the past would look at us in the modern day and think we're insane. That we are utterly retarded. What do you mean you're allowing children to go around claiming to be the other gender? Are you crazy? What? Holy crap! You are murdering your unborn children? Are you a friggin' monster? Like they would lose their crap. At so many practices.
But some of you said about like the whole like what things would you restrict? Like via state power, whatever, or be this culturally. I think it really kind of just depends on what the people are like. Like, because here's an example. If you were to take like a rampant homosexual who lives in, say, San Francisco. Like the reason why he has all those values and likes living in San Francisco is because the San Francisco apparatus enables his degeneracy, right? And the people who live there are pretty much kind of okay with it, hence why he's fine living there. Now, if you take him in and you put him in Saudi Arabia would kill him because like he's absolutely antithetical to the values of the Saudis. Now, if you are in Saudi Arabia and you went to San Francisco, you'd want San Francisco to completely change because it absolutely violates all of your values. But if you're in Saudi Arabia, then you are now free from the degeneracy of San Francisco. So like the freedom and authority is really just what do you expect the state to make you the one is values free to and the other one is free from, but you're still expecting the ruling apparatus to enable or not enable certain things. It's just based on what the people actually want. Like people like the Saudi guy would find your hedonistic worldviews horribly offensive, but if you're like a Christian in Saudi Arabia, aside the fact that it's Muslim, but the order that they have, you would actually be okay with that. It's like, hey, look, everything that I don't like about San Francisco, Saudi Arabia actually restricts. I'm not actually opposed to this. Like if it was Christians instead of Muslims, most Christians would actually be okay with that kind of rule. The gays would hate it because
wouldn't
it's
go
too much
that far.
authoritarian.
I wouldn't
I
go
actually
that
think
far.
they would.
There's a lot of incompatibility between Christianity and Islam. Massive.
No. I don't mean like the actual rule, like those kind of rules. I mean like if you, like, I guarantee you, if a bunch of Christians had a society and they restricted like gays via state power, I guarantee you Christians would not care about that at all. They'd favor that.
Well, I don't know.
Not necessarily you like throw them off roofs the way that the Islamists do.
Well, that because I don't know about this. Is where I'm at a crossroads because I'm a Christian and there are some very strict moral standards that I feel I'm trying to live towards and I want to promote and stuff. But there are times, and we've seen in the past, when the state has tried to restrict certain practices and it just backfires. It's a complete disaster. The prohibition is probably the best example where the state restricted alcohol consumption and it just bred, almost
black markets.
Organized crime, black markets. It was impossible to police. And look, this is something that's risen enough our discussions with about pornography. I think pornography is really, really damaging. Okay, I don't see any positives to porn at all, and so in terms of what are the standards of banning pornography? Well, it's, banned in my household. I ban it from my kids, right? And so here is me imposing a type of law under my house, right? But I don't think I could say that the state should do it because I don't think it could be policed or carried out. I'm not sure. I don't think it would work, and it would lead to more problems. I'm on the fence though. I could be convinced otherwise because I think pornography is really bad, of course. So yeah, this is one that I actually struggle with because of there is a level of over policing, even with things that I think are legitimately bad that I don't think functionally would work. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I've noticed a lot of the issues with banning things. I've noticed the people who are pro like the most amount of degeneracy, a lot of them would just object to any state banning whatsoever because again they're libertarian minded. But I've noticed a lot, like for example, I made a video before where I said I would not ban pornography, and then there's another one I said I actually would. And they said to me, well, you're being hypocritical. Which one is it? And I said, no, it kind of depends. You see, in an ideal society, I would not ban it because I would imagine that people would be able to regulate their own behavior. But the main reason I would be opposed to banning is because I don't trust the people in power to actually regulate that with any kind of benevolence. So it's not that I'm opposed to the banning, it's that I'm opposed to handing the current people in power more power. That's my issue.
That's a very good point as well, because whenever
I think that's the main reason why people frown upon like any kind of monarchical figure. It's not because they dislike monarchy, it's because they don't think anyone in power is worthy of ruling.
I think that's a very good point, because whenever someone floats the idea of getting the government to regulate something that honestly does need to be regulated, right? I have an instant knee-jerk.
They trust no one.
I do not trust the government. I do not want the government to have more power to impose certain things, and so I get what you're saying with that regard, which puts you almost
it's like Rabbit and Chap says they're trying to ram through digital ID. Like that is absolutely the thing.
I mean, because
I don't think that's going to work though.
Well, my kids are banned from using social media, right?
Well done.
I actually believe that social media can be very damaging to young minds and things like that. And hell, I think it'd be really damaging to adults as well, that most adults don't understand it or use it appropriately by any means. Like, holy crap, social media is just like
a time sink.
Not only that, it exaggerates some of the worst human behaviors and makes it amplified.
It's because I think it's because you don't have the sort of visceral reaction of normal human interaction. Like there's no way I'd be able to say the kind of shit that I say on social media to somebody's face just because I'd be horrified by it. Like I say some wild shit on social media, and I make liberal use of very bad words, especially since I know how to bypass the filtering system. That's why, like, I'm able, because people have said to me, like, how can you drop the F-bomb constantly and never get banned? I'm like, it's because I have friends who taught me how to bypass that. It's fun. I've not, I think I have once dropped the N-word. Because I've noticed you can say with an A, and that's fine. You won't be get restricted for that.
Okay.
But if you go like ER, then that's when you will. And like, unless, of course, you know how to bypass the filter system, in which case you can drop it all damn day long. Unless you get mass reported. But I don't think I have. I don't think I've been reported by. I think one of them I did, because it had like 50,000 views. So I think I might have pissed off someone with that one.
Well, thank you for sharing the deep lore with us there, Spoon. I'm not sure I'll ever use it, but now people...
Oh, yes, you will. If I tell you, you absolutely friggin' will.
I'm a very clean man, Spoon. I don't say the naughty words.
Yes, you do.
No,
Everyone says naughty words.
Well, look, there are words that are more colorful that I resort to when I'm, angry, but they're not the words that other people resort to. I usually say friggin' and crap and piss or something like that. That's my crass language.
I mean, I try to keep the swearing to a minimum, because if it's excessive, it becomes boring because you hear it constantly, and it's like a sign of crappy, verbal usage. But I like it's more potent if you use it rarely.
It is. But the thing is, I find swearing, even though I try to avoid it, I actually do find a very intriguing concept, because it is something that is completely socially engineered. Like it's artificial. There's nothing inherently wrong with a word. It's wholly based on the culture that people are conditioned to react towards. And
that's true.
Fascinating. All right, there's something, because I'm going to have to jump off in about 20 minutes. The family are wanting to watch Stargate with me, and I've been loving it. Stargate SG-1, man, great show. But there's something I wanted to discuss with you that I find intriguing as well. And so I'll try and bridge the gap of the topics we're on, because we're just talking about the idea that there are moral standards that I can look at certain things that I think, honestly, it would make sense for the government or the leading authority to impose, but then we get into a gray area of we don't want the government to have more power. Sometimes it's just unpoliceable and other things. And man, I think that's a hard subject to kind of come to a strong conclusion on as to what I think should be done, because it's like I can't think of the answers.
I don't think it's the structure. I think it's the people in it just suck.
Yeah,
that's the main thing that everyone complains about. Is not that it's not that you don't want the government to have more power, is that you dislike the current people having power. Like if you said to people, a king can wield more power than any of these government officials, but they'll be way more benevolent, everyone would be fine with that.
Yeah, and honestly, I would be too. And as a Christian, there are moral standards that I hold to, that my church, upholds and expects people to live according to. And if you transgress those standards, there are consequences. You'll be excommunicated from the church if you don't know. And so, like in practice, there are higher standards that I think are good for people to be held to, that are beneficial far more than what's in the world. And I think would be good for society more broadly as well. That's where the conflict between, like, if you're a traditional Christian and you believe in the teachings of Jesus Christ, you will actually find that there is some incompatibility with the notion of full liberalism. Everyone should be free to live. Now, Christianity doesn't say that you should restrict people's freedom to sin. In actual fact, one of the foundation principles is to protect people's ability to sin, but then they'll be judged accordingly. So I'm not.
Well, you kind of need that, because if you just impose control, the people don't learn anything.
Oh, absolutely, exactly. You need to guide people towards that. And I guess, look, if there was any ultimate takeaway, that's the actual true path to try and pursue, it is encourage and persuade people to live according to higher moral standards. But that takes work, and sometimes, like, people are just too selfish. They don't want to do it. They're like, I'm happy living my hedonistic life the way I want. Screw you, go away. And you should let me live my life unto my own destruction. But it comes to a point where I'm sometimes get conflicted where at what point should we stand by and let people destroy themselves through their own ignorance, misguided belief that this leads to happiness, when we can see like incredible rampant drug abuse and absolute abandon of any sexual kind of conservatism, right? Standards, right? Like we can see that so many of these things lead to people ruining their lives. Now, again, I'm not advocating for the government to impose things, but we can see like another example, like for me, I think it makes sense for, say, the consumption of tobacco to be banned, but then we come into the whole prohibition thing where it would just lead to an underground, dispersion and production
black
chain.
market. Yeah,
it will just lead to a black market of it. But like, it is literal
and it's
poison.
worse.
Yeah, it is. The consumption of tobacco is poison. There is no benefit at all to the human body in doing this. Okay, and so it is actually kind of bonkers to me that
makes you look cool for a movie.
Right, it does make you look cool.
Aesthetics is about it. Yeah,
poison, literal poison, is legal to sell. Is bonkers to me. And what's also bonkers, right? Imagine if smoking wasn't invented and we have our current society today, and someone comes forward to try and get legal permission to sell this, and they're like, "What is that? Oh, it's called a cigarette. What does it do?" Well, you suck smoke and tar into your lungs, and it's poisonous and everything like that. Well, can I get approval to sell it? Like, in no modern world would that ever be allowed to be sold. But it's because it became so prominent, and we didn't have enough medical tech understanding to know how damaging it was, that it's also a common enough practice. People find some measure of, enjoyment out of it. But, and I'm not...
I wonder if early production was actually better.
What do you mean? Like, as in less damaging?
Yeah, I wonder if it's like the closer it is to nature and you're just burning the leaves themselves, if it's actually as bad. I imagine with there's less chemicals in it might actually be better.
Look, I'm not an expert on it, but it's an example. And even if you disagree with me, because some people are saying that it's not true what I'm saying about cigarettes. I'm not an expert, okay? But substitute it with something, I think we can see things that are bad for people with very little to no benefit at all. And if there is no benefit at all and it only causes harm, at what point, and this is the question that I don't have the answer for, at what point does permitting people do it end up being a type of negligence and abuse and harm that you are allowing other people by not protecting them from themselves? And I have no idea where that line could be drawn and the standard to find.
I think people just frown at the idea of state power doing it. I think people, for the most part, fine with shame. Because if I look at any of these kinds of things, it does seem to me that a complete lack of shame is where society goes wrong. Because that's the main reason, the main method that people tend to enforce or reinforce good behavior is praise when it's good and shame when it's bad.
Yeah.
If you don't want the state to step in, that's generally what you revert to. Is like, for example, I remember, I think it was either Walter Williams or Thomas Sowell spoke about this, like in the 60s, like before like the civil rights movement. If there was like a teenager that got pregnant, you would be like outcasted. You'd be like sent to live on the families, but your aunt and uncles in the farm, like away from civilized society, because you'd bring shame. Mm-hmm. And nowadays you find like teenagers pregnant, they fucking put it on social media. It's like, how the hell did we get to that? That's kind of gross.
Yeah, that is interesting. Like, there was a much stronger societal moral standard that wasn't imposed by the rule of law, but society
rule of family.
Upheld. Yeah, rule of family, natural cultural practices. A lot of it does come from Christianity. And that seems to be getting abandoned wholesale in the modern day. And it's not good. Because...
Also, the state does employ positive reinforcement. It's called lobbying.
There was something I want to talk to you about as well, though we're unfortunately running out of time, but it's the idea of tribalism.
Well, that's just normal.
Well, I actually agree. Like I think this is a result of human biology almost, that is instinctive, that
It's
like,
defensive in nature, yeah.
yeah, like it's a protection mechanism that's, if you want to appeal to even by evolution, you can see where it would have come from, right? That humans are never going to really get rid of. I think it's almost an essential, like not an inseparable part of our psyche. This notion of tribalism. Now, it's often criticized, and I think validly so in many cases, because when people ignore objective truth and reality for the beliefs of the tribe, that's when it's just like gets really, really frustrating. But it's not to say that there aren't positive aspects to tribalism if it's a good tribe that has a proper good moral standard. And of course, my tribe that I identify with is my church. And I think it's actually like there are practices where it can be positive, but also negative. But before I ramble and get too jumbled with my thoughts, what are your kind of thoughts about that? Like positive or negative
like
aspects?
Tribalism and
yeah. Is
well,
it possible
I think
to utilize it? Or
I think the negative aspect for our tribe is just if you push us into a corner, historically speaking, is a bad idea, because ethnic Europeans, if you push us into a corner, we tend to make new nation states. So we're not, historically speaking, the group to fuck with. We tend to be very organized and very ruthless. So just if you push us to the point where everyone around us that doesn't look like us is constantly robbing our resources, take that to its logical endpoint, it's going to get really, really ugly. For everybody else, for us, we'll be fine because we're the one doing the damage. But just from a historical perspective, like, really don't push us to a brink, because we get organized very quickly. And oh my God, do you know what happens if you unrestrain Europeans and you tell them, go forth and conquer? People disappear rapidly. So maybe don't do that.
I mean, if you look at the history of Europe, it's constant warfare amongst themselves, and
that's a thing that people should be aware. It's ourselves.
Well,
and our civilizations are better. So if everyone else is worse, and we are tooled up by fighting the best people, don't push. Don't. It'll end badly for you.
When you look to the medieval period, right? There is this incorrect notion about this claim or accusation that Europeans are always inherently racist, and it's like, hang on, go back to the medieval period. Do you know who the French were racist against? It wasn't people of different skin color.
The English.
It was the English, or the other people like.
But the thing of it is,
the bigotry that existed in the medieval period was often against other white people, and they actually
because it's people who are closer to you.
Yeah, they understood.
You're always going to be most discriminated against people who are the biggest threat to you via location. So yeah, obviously it's going to be people next door to you because they're the ones that can fight and take your resources. That's just common sense.
Yeah, and the racial component was actually almost non-existent in terms of the bigotry that, if you look in certain parts of history, that it was far more culturally based. And you can find, in terms of the racial component, they actually almost had it like this form of intrigue, fascination with people of dark skin, where they even had a Saint Maurice. You can look this guy up, right? The belief is that this was one of the people. Oh, look, I might be getting this wrong. It's been a while since I actually read up on this, right? From memory, it was the guy that held the spear that put it in the side of Christ, but that they believe he was an African Roman legionnaire or some kind like that. And then he was made a saint, and you can find these depictions of this black person with just wearing incredible ornate golden armor and everything like that. And then you find these other images, I've got them actually saved, of like people from the Middle East with dark skin who must be traders or something like that because they're really well dressed. But what we are seeing is like really
merchants.
Positive depictions of people of different races and ethnicities in medieval period, and so it's just like this idea.
Well, it would be because if you are a society of Europeans and there's people that are coming to you they would obviously be merchants wealthy enough to do the traveling. So they would obviously be in great garb because they have the means to do so. So that's like fairly normal. You don't see peasants, well, unless they're like slaves, because that's just true.
Yeah.
That's just how society works. I've noticed like people have absolutely no concept or understand that. You do realize people did not have the same values as you do now. Like you are a product of an ungodly amount of propaganda to the point where like you would not, like you're so propagandized you literally can't conceive of any other freaking time, place, or value system. Like that's how much people are propagandized. Like when people say, "Oh, look, if I was in like the 1700s in America, I would have been pro eradicating slavery." Like, bitch, no, you fucking wouldn't. If you had like everyone around you is working with slaves, you would look at a civilization of like 300 years ago. They have none of what you have, and you're telling me you're going to look at these people and go, "Oh, look, they can be just like us." No, you wouldn't. That's complete bollocks.
Oh, people are so much, a byproduct of how they are raised in the society.
It's presentism. It's complete rubbish.
Yeah. And also the idea that, we in the modern day are so much more morally enlightened than people of the past. When we already talked about people of the past will look to us and they will see certain things that we're doing as barbaric beyond belief, like abortion. They would look like, you murder unborn children? Are you a savage? What do you mean it happens to this scale? It happens that I reckon they'd have a freaking heart attack. Like
I would love to have taken like French philosophers that were like under King Louis the 14th that had like absolute royal absolutism, and look at our societies and go, oh yeah, we allow everyone in a multiracial society to vote. They would think like, are you out of your mind? How on earth is this working? Oh, it doesn't. Society is basically going down the tubes and we're getting screwed for it. Like, okay, so why the hell are you continuing this system if it's completely mad? I don't think I'd have a good answer for him if you were to ask me that question. Because I saw this video a while ago and I thought this was really interesting. And he gave this example of why women shouldn't vote. This dude went like a 2.5-minute speech. And one thing that just struck me as very weird is that women vote for dumb shit. And I thought, okay, so what you're actually saying is if people want dumb shit, you don't want them to vote for it. So what you're actually saying is there's certain things you shouldn't be able to vote for. Okay, so why do you give them the option in the first place if any application of them is bad? You don't actually want people to be able to vote. You want competent rulers and the idiots not to be able to vote. So why do you have voting at all?
Well, that's a can of worms. I'm not sure we got the time to go into, but
it's a good question.
There are things to consider. No, there are things to consider. Like this video, I feel is actually worth considering. Maybe and look, we're not going to have time to dive into it completely, but I'll have to share this. But there are certainly things worth considering here. Right? I'm not sure if you see it. It was just on Twitter today, but I think look. These are fair things to consider. So maybe we'll just.
Oh, I'm not a fan of those two.
Cause one specific particular problem, and that is wokeness. Like a lot of people, I was baffled by the woke phenomenon. Why did everyone seemingly go?
This thing, right? That a lot of the woke movement comes from a
kind of
freeze
frame. That is.
Sorry, what? Yeah.
Hell of a freeze frame. That is.
A lot of the woke ideology actually comes out of a very feminized kind of perspective and approach to things about we have to be sympathetic with everyone's identity and acknowledge it because they feel bad, right? Like that has been something that I think a lot of people have been noticing, and more people are being vocal about it, like this lady here, right?
Go crazy all at once in the summer of 2020. It was inexplicable. It seemed to be mass hysteria, genuinely. And the more I thought about what caused it, which is a very important question, because if we know what causes it, we know how to prevent it from happening in the future. I read an article that someone else wrote that put forward a really simple, elegant thesis, which is that wokeness is simply feminine patterns of behavior applied to institutions where women had not been very well represented until recently. Women.
Interesting.
There is an element of truth to that, yes.
Yeah.
Do you know a play called The Assembly Women?
No, I do not.
It was a play written by Aristophanes. He was a Greek satirist. Our civilization looks like they read that and went, yeah, let's do this. Like everything that you see now is done in that play. Like it's what happens if you give women complete control of state power. They literally just enact equality, like to an insane degree. And if I look at that and go, how is it that someone like 2,000 years ago was able to predict modern day through satire? That tells me that women are biologically hardwired to do stupid shit. Like you must restrict women in
I
any
wouldn't go that
capacity
far.
because no, I would because by the way, the main thing that I learned this from is other women. Like literally, Queen Victoria says women should have no business in politics because it is the role of men. And that's the Queen saying that. The Queen is openly telling you women should not get involved with this because like we're emotional creatures and we do dumb shit. This is the role of men. Men should lead. Which is true.
Did you hear about the lady who decided to make a company that only hired women? And
oh god, that must have been hell.
Oh, it was such a nightmare for her that the company went bankrupt, and in her later businesses, she only hired men.
Well, yeah, of course. Like I've literally, I remember there was a while ago. There was this girl. She stood up in front of like an assembly of like a bunch of ladies. It was to do with like programming, and she hired a bunch of programmers. And she openly said she would only hire men because the women wouldn't work as hard and complain, and the men would just do their job. And I've heard other women just say like, if they want a male boss or a female boss, oh my god, give me a male boss because women are just drama. And it's women saying this. And the thing that I've joked about this. If you're a man, you cannot listen to women without becoming sexist. Like that is inevitable.
Well, look, Spoon. You know the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, right? One of the cultural like practices that it has maintained and has no intention of changing. Leadership in the church is only held by the men.
Yes. This is true. Like you just look at it functionally speaking.
Now,
the main thing I've known that women complain about is other women.
We do have female organizations like the Relief Society that have women leadership, but the actual leadership of the church is by the men.
Male, yeah.
Yep. Only men can hold the priesthood. And look, I honestly, I still believe and follow the practice that, the man is the head of the household. Okay. And there are, of course, reasons for that. Though I don't think women have no role in leadership. I just feel that they occupy a different realm of leadership. And a good Lindy Beige actually had a really good video on outwards flowing power and inwards flowing power. And it's actually, I found quite insightful, where he explained that the notions of outwards flowing power are better occupied and historically were occupied more by men, because that is going out into the world, that's dealing with negotiations with they're either leaders, rulers, tribes, conflicts, and when there was ever a place where the world needed to be tamed, brought under control, that was the role for men. But women occupied inwards flowing power, where they ran the operations of their household. They would sometimes handle the budget. They would be the ones who controlled what was on the menu for the food. That was how the schedule of what the kids would do during the day, that the women would occupy this inward flowing power because they were really good at it. There's a whole, biological thing that women are really good at multitasking, where men are really good at focusing on single tasks and stuff like that. And these roles naturally came out of the natural normal differences between men and women, and they were happy to occupy it. Like women wanted men to go out and handle the leadership, because when things got dangerous,
that's what they're good at.
Yeah, men are really good at handling conflict, and especially in negotiations. But not like every type of negotiation. We're talking about trade negotiations and just selling something to handling potential threats and conflicts. The fact that men are simply just bigger and more physically imposing, right, means that they can perform those tasks better than women. It's just a natural biological reality. Like, so often my wife is telling my kid to do something and she repeats herself 1, 2, 3 times, and my kid is ignoring him. And she turns to me and says, Shad, and it takes one, stern word from me and they jump to it because I got a bigger voice. It's just basic
deference to authority.
Yeah, but it feels like the modern person is deathly afraid of acknowledging those realities on larger scales, like, governmental leadership and things like that, that there might be an inherent role that men are actually, good to do, good, like built to do well. And when that is subverted, it can lead to some problems societally. And this is what this lady is kind of talking about.
Yeah, I tend to disagree with that. I think you can just state these things, and the kind of women that get annoyed and pissed off is women that you would want to be around with anyway.
Well,
like I've noticed that, like but the thing that I've noticed with women is women. This is going to sound insane because this is like completely antithetical to modern society. Women do not like thinking. Women like being told what to do. That is true. Like if you ask if you ever look at like interviews where like they ask a girl like what do they find attractive in a man, almost every single one of them is dominance. Like a man that is in control, a man that tells women what to do, a man that like knows what he wants and isn't afraid of it is like unbelievably attractive to women. Like, yeah, because that's what you're supposed to be attracted to. Strength, dominance, power.
So I wouldn't phrase it that women don't like to think, but I understand what you're trying to say about that. Because if you like seen that video of the girl who's like, I don't want to be independent, that viral clip that went around. Have you seen that one?
Yeah.
Because she's basically playing about feminism, saying, "Oh, you got to go out and be independent," and then she's like, otherwise you'll.
All I wanted was to be a mother.
Yeah, it's like
you
have. And then you have to go out and you might be a mother and you have to be, lose your independence. She's like, that is all I want. She wants a man.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, she just like yells it. Yeah. It's like all I wanted was to be a mother and raise kids, but no, I have to get a job. I have to be independent. You fucking assholes ruined it for me. Like, yeah, I can understand that. I remember watching this other video. There was a girl and she said she was like living with a guy. And then she started like cooking for him and cleaning up after him. And she went like, he didn't even tell me to do these things. I just did them. And they made me happy. Mm-hmm. I don't understand it. I'm like, yeah, because you're fulfilling a normal biological female role. That's the reason why you're happy, because it's normal.
Well, how about
that's the reason why.
Because obviously women like to think, but like to think about the things that are appeal to them in their realm, their sphere of influence. Like my wife, she thinks about our home constantly and making it better, and we're looking for a new home, and she is like so like more actively involved in trying to find the best home for us.
Yeah, they like thinking within their boundaries, put it that way.
Exactly. Yes, I think that's a much better way of putting it. Yes. Because there are other aspects that I think women are quite relieved to not have to worry about, and that means not think about. For instance, like when I'm out with my wife and kids, I'm alert. I'm looking for potential danger and threats. I'm constantly having my head on a swivel because the world is really dangerous these days. And I'm not sure my wife gives that a second thought. And I think she's happy that she doesn't need to worry about that. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So yes, that's where I think we could find more.
But I feel like if I need to dumb that down, there'll be a bunch of like if there's people upset at me about saying that, there'll be like the one or two women that will scold them and go, "Well, you know what he meant, you jackass. You're just looking for conflict."
Isn't that interesting? Because like it's about preaching in good faith. Where I heard that. And it's a more extreme statement than I would go to, but I could see what you were meaning by it. And I'm not this bad faith asshole who's trying to,
see, but
just
that's what I mean by that statement. Like if you throw out that statement, like a smarter one will go like, I know what he means. And the bitchy ones that are too stupid will get annoyed and they won't talk to you. Like you can make it like a generalizing statement and the smarter ones will go, I know what he means. And they'll talk to you. And yeah, exactly.
As a filtering mechanism.
Like I've openly said this. I did this on a podcast a while ago and I pissed off the girl and she hasn't spoken to me since, which is good because I don't want someone like that to fucking talk to me. I made like a very generalizing statement about women. And I said to them, you do realize if I make a generalizing statement about women and it doesn't apply to you and you get pissed off, you're an idiot. If I'm using a generalizing statement to judge you without knowing you, now it's using it against you without knowing you. Now you have a reason to be pissed off because I'm using it to judge you. But if the generalizing statement doesn't apply to you, why are you upset?
But hey, we'll try and finish this clip, so we'll keep going.
And tend to be more consensus focused, consensus oriented. Men, when they're approaching a moral question, will ask, what are the facts? What are the rules?
This
Whereas
part,
women will say, what are the relationships at play here? How can we make everybody happy? How can we reach an outcome?
Exactly. Like that, I feel is quite significant, where women are so much about how does it make people feel, the outcome. More often, of course, there's exceptions, but more often that is the natural feminine approach to things, where men are like, no, what's the right and wrong, the here and now. Okay.
By the way, this is why that woman's business failed. Is because she tried to do that.
Yeah.
The male model is what is functional, and
What
I will
works.
hack off a limb of everyone who pisses me off and who doesn't do what I want. Because that's
Mhm.
work. That's how hierarchy
Yeah.
works. Is that
Well,
any system of what is fat that needs to be trimmed?
it's a natural nature of masculine competitiveness as well. It's like if
Yes.
you're not shaping
Function.
up, exactly. These are legitimately the benefits of masculinity. And holy crap, one of the biggest causes of the problems of the world is the attack on masculinity and the destruction of it from positions of leadership and authority.
I just
Taking
realized the
away-
welfare state is entirely feminine.
Almost so, yeah. Like honestly, yeah. Like,
I think about that until just now, like, huh.
No, the notion of social welfare systems comes from and look, it's not a bad thing. It just needs to be applied correctly, right? The feminine, empathetic nature to help those in need is good, and especially for raising children, that is supremely important, right? Okay, but applying it to a national scale, when guess what? There are some people that are lazy and they're not helping themselves, and feeding and constantly just throwing money at them just drives them into alcoholism and drug abuse, right? It's like,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like
Please don't feed the animals; they'll become dependent.
You know, I always think of this when this comes up, because people are throwing money at a problem. Like there are so many examples of that just making things worse. And there's a term in certain Aboriginal communities in Australia called sit-down money, and it's these communities that have certain land rights that have precious resources, and so these companies come in and of course pay them heaps of money to get access to the land, to mine it and things like that. And so nearly everyone in this community gets paid money basically for nothing. And these communities, this term comes from these communities. They call that money sit-down money, because they don't need to do a thing. They just get money and then they just go. And unfortunately, the problems that are in these Aboriginal communities are really hard to address, because they are just drowning in drug and alcohol abuse. It's almost like this is enabling it. It's throwing money at it. It's not fixing it at all. But the idea of social welfare can be used effectively, but when it gets taken too far, it's just throwing money at things that rarely resolve stuff.
It can only work in a homogenous society, because in any group, like this is where tribalism comes into play.
When you say homogenous, like I would say like culturally,
your own kin. No. I think it's purely genetic.
Really? See, I don't think so.
No, the reason I say this is because culture does not mean as much as your own kin. Like if you were to say, hey, look, we can replace all of England with Christian Frenchmen, do you think the English would be happy with that?
No, they wouldn't.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. It doesn't matter that they're culturally similar. It's the fact that they're French and they're English and they're in England. So no, I think the genes people think when you think genetics, people think like this. Genetics in our timeline means massacring anyone that doesn't have our genes. But like if it's like, put it this way, I think of like private property is you are able to discriminate against someone for any particular reason whatsoever. It's not limited by any particular category. But if you look at what the state does, the state says, for some bizarre reason that I have yet to have anybody answer this, is that your immediate discrimination capacity is unlimited when it comes to you and your family, your own private property. So at what point, scaling that past like your own individual family, does it become so taboo to the point where the state tells you the categories that you may no longer discriminate against?
I don't know. So this is
exactly
where I haven't done huge amounts of thought in, but going back to the initial statement about social welfare, I think social welfare can work to an extent, and I've seen it work effectively. But when I say culture, it's like a uniform culture of people that understands the concepts of merit and also those who are actually deserving of social help, for instance, the disabled and stuff like that. I think there's obviously an important role that social welfare can fulfill, right? But
Okay, so here's a hypothetical for you.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of disabled people, and the disabled people they're both equally disabled, but the one is your kin and the other one is not. Which one will you prioritize?
Oh, always your family member first. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. People will prioritize their own.
It's not to say that if I have additional resources that I'm not willing to help someone who's not my family who needs it.
No, that's true, but people will always prioritize their own because that's normal. It's not a taboo. That's just how people are wired.
Yeah,
I feel like so much of what is taboo is like political interference with what people will normally behave like. That's kind of the reason why I don't like politics. Like a lot of like the main instinctual functions of human behavior in our timeline is considered taboo because basically any tribalism in our society is politically made taboo because they think it will lead to the Third Reich. That is like our entire civilization post World War II order is anything that is good for our kin might lead us to Germany. Once you remove that, you'll realize there's no more justification for literally anything. It's just this because monarchies.
Pull you up on that, right? Like, I think that only applies to, the tribe that people
Western
think
countries.
Western countries, yeah, like because the left are supremely tribal on everything, and they claim that's their right to do it. But if people from Western countries show any level of tribalism, suddenly they say, well, that's racist. How dare you have a preference to people of your own?
It's because we're better.
You mean like more successful?
No, no, I think if I just look at our civilizations, we are better than everybody else, and if we were to get organized and actually used force, we would crush the entire world pretty easily. Well, we have to be restrained because
America is showing.
No, I don't really think it's. No, I actually think America greatly fears Europe.
Well, no, I'm saying like when from a military standpoint, what they did with Venezuela when they actually got their crap together.
Yeah, but I mean, if I look at like the Third Reich and the fact that it was Germans, Germany went pretty freaking far with just Germans.
Oh yeah, the Blitzkrieg attacks was crazy effective.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of drugs involved, which is why they were able to stay away for like 3 days and just massacre tanks. But they still did that. I mean, I look at groups of people and go, how is it that this group of people had socialism, which is horrible apparently, but they were able to conquer the entire, or be on the verge of conquering all of Europe within 10 years? Like, that's insane. Like, how did they do that? Are you telling me the Aryan Superman myth isn't real? My eyes make me think it might be. And also, as soon as the world was over, they took them and then tried to land on the moon. So I'm trying to think there actually might be something there.
I don't know. I don't believe in ultimate racial supremacy of a certain race. I do believe in that there are absolutely cultures. I believe the culture of the West, right, is.
I do believe some groups are better at certain things. Like Germans are exceptional at engineering. Like that, that is a fact. Like they're very, very good at that.
It's the whole white men can't jump thing. There's a reason why a lot of the world records in terms of
no, but we can shoot apparently.
Running speed and jumping speed are held by Africans and stuff like that. Of course, there are certain genetic differences, but but
that doesn't mean one group is good or bad unless they can utilize it to literally kill everybody else, in which case that might be a leg up just from an evolutionary perspective. It's always just the potential is going to do bad things. Like that's not really how people work. Like I can acknowledge a genetic supremacy of speed or strength, but that doesn't mean that everyone who is stronger than me is going to kill everyone that is weaker than them. That's not how people work.
Well, yeah, there's a lot involved in that. But when it comes to Europe, well, we already talked about Europeans were fighting each other for a very long time and ended up being very, very good at it.
Yeah. But that's all of human history. People fight next door to them because that's the people who are a bigger threat to you. Conquest and conquer is human nature. It's like animals do that as well. When they travel to different places or they move, they kill things to survive. That's just how mammals work. It's not necessarily good or bad. It's just how the organisms survive.
All right, let's try and finish off the clip, and because what she's saying, I think has a lot of validity.
That will satisfy all the parties, as opposed to the male perspective of how do we reach an outcome that is just and according to the rules. That sounded a lot like wokeness to me, and the sort of piece that made it all click into place for me, the coincidence of timing. It is the case, just we can all agree as a matter of fact, that a lot of institutions that went woke or were affected by woke became demographically female in the last 5 years.
I mean, you can see it. Like, you just like have a look at the examples, you know?
I literally said in a video, and this is like the one thing about it, because when it comes to gaming, I tend to piss off my audience a lot. Because
I've seen a couple of your videos.
Yeah, but the one that tends to be very popular is I would eliminate all women from the production pipeline except for like body scanning and voice acting. That's the one thing that seems to be very popular.
No,
because I've just said to them, like, look at every stupid thing that's been done by gaming. There's a woman every time.
No, Spoon, you don't even need to do that. Just like if it was based on merit and not forced DEI, like whoever is producing the best games will end up getting the jobs, and you will see certain demographic trends appear as to which, gender tends to be able to produce better results in different, career paths. When left to their own devices, men and women just gravitate towards the career paths that they like, and they end up being different. Yeah.
I also feel like, when this is, I've seen this from girls who game, like actual girl gamers, not gamer girls, because gamer girls are just posers. But the main ones that detest women in their spaces is the handful of like Chad ladies you can actually hang with the guys and make jokes. Because the one thing they know is that when like that bitchy type of attitude comes, they're like, no, do not allow them in here. They will ruin you. They will ruin my time here. I don't like having other women here because they piss me off. Like they specifically go to a male group because the women annoy them. And when they see other women come into their space, they get very territorial. And they basically like try to like sort of coax them in like, hey, can you just get this bitch the hell out of here because she's going to ruin my time and I actually like it here. Because there's nothing that annoys women more than other women coming into space where they're not welcomed. It's true.
I can think of examples. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but what you find is like, of course, women do gravitate towards groups of women, and they, and same with men. But the problem is, there's been an attack on male-only spaces in the last several years where it's like, oh, how dare you have a thing where it's only men allowed, but it's perfectly fine for women to have only women allowed spaces. In fact, they're having companies that only hire women, and no one is going to call that out as sexist. I mean, I thought like,
because we don't need to, because it's going to fail.
It's funny that men don't have an issue with it. Like, it seems like a lot of feminists get bent out of shape when men have their male-only spaces, but I see very few men at all complain about women-only spaces. Men are like, yeah, fine. You go.
Yeah, because we understand why. They just get pissed off when they try to come into our spaces. Like when I just see, my main reaction is when I see a bunch of women complaining that there's men only spaces. I just like, so let me get this straight. You are complaining that I have a space for only men, and you want me to drag your bitchy ass into this particular space. Why would I do that? You're annoying before you're even here.
But hey, I'm actually out of time. I'm also over time because my family are wanting to watch Stargate. But let me quickly grab some of these super chats. And Walla Vio Mala just says money for $2, and then he says more money for another $5. Thank you, sir. And then he says again $10 for money, and he goes up to $20 for money.
That's a fun super chat.
That is, but he's still going. For 25, hey, mate, we appreciate the chats. He says, one of two, most of the problem in West are caused by people that would get traumatized from a barista misspelling their name in a Starbucks.
That's probably true, actually.
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of find, like, these people tend to stand out. So, and again, for 25, he says, all of this could be solved by trading their citizenship for a one-way ticket to all these places they defend, like Palestine.
Yeah,
I mean,
because they wouldn't come back.
there's a lot of defenses on the left for Mr. Faith,
Maduro.
Venezuela, Maduro. That's the one. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, you love Maduro. I'd be interested.
I'm probably one of the few people that are not a fan of what America did.
What?
There's only like a handful of. No, I don't. I think it
that's
sets a really, really bad precedence. I also don't like America just acting like jackasses on the world stage and thinking it's best. The reason I don't like it is because all of these people for freaking years cheered that Trump was non-interventionist. Then he does this next to Lindsey Graham, and all of a sudden people are in favor for him. Like, you don't actually have any principles. You just cheer whenever your side does shit. I don't like that. That's the part I dislike.
Well, I talked about that in my last live stream, but that's a can of worms. I can't. That's a long back and forth. So who knows? Maybe we can talk more about stuff like that later.
I also got a massive Twitter post that went hugely viral because I basically called people out on that shit. I said, like, America has done this like 3 times and it always ended in hell. Why are you idiots cheering this now? Like, piss off. It got like 1.2 million views, which is insane.
I don't think this is going to end in hell, but we'll wait and see.
I'm not exactly very confident. Yeah, I am from a BRICS nation, so I have to be on the pro-Russia and well, I'm pro-Russia when it comes to Ukraine, because like, how many times can you openly say, hey, look, we have interest in like toppling your nation before the nation goes, yeah, fuck off.
Well, I think this is very different to say Iraq or something like that. I think this is it's a larger topic, and if people do want to hear my further thoughts, I guess you can check out my live stream where I'm talking about, because there's layers to it. Like the whole regime change thing, and what point does a country have?
The entire regime is still there. That's the thing that I don't understand. People are cheering this on, like, you don't realize you took out one guy and the entire government is still there. Like, this is not regime change. It's just like you mucking about with one dude and then like declaring this like a great victory. I'm like, no.
But hey, Trex32 says for $5, can you please explain white generational guilt? Furthermore, why does it only exist in Western civilization? Here's the thing. I've never had white guilt. I've resented the very notion of it. And part of my whole YouTube channel is celebrating medieval history, which is my own history, my cultural and ethnic heritage, right? And I'm proud of it. I think medieval history is friggin' hardcore. It rocks. And I'm very grateful for what my ancestors did to help build, civilization. What?
I would say, because if you don't have guilt, what you'll have is pride. And if you have pride, you will look at everyone else and go, why are you here? You are not good. And then that leads to some serious questions. And if the questions don't get answered, I don't see the solution being not bloody.
So that kind of goes into the whole immigration kind of discussion. And just to be kind of briefly address it, I'm getting blackpilled on immigration currently because it's gone so overboard. It's causing so many problems in Australia, especially with the recent Bondi attack. But I'm also, I keep in mind the fact that Australia is a country built basically on immigration. I feel that when it's focused on merit and bringing in people who share cultural values and a lower amount of people who, because if you keep it contained, I think some assimilation is possible. We've seen it in the past. Australia, like, there is less history to preserve here in Australia because it's a country that's founded on people coming over here and moving, because I actually really sympathize with the arguments about Japan should have a right to stay Japanese. And I think the English have that right as well. Like, there's a lot of cultural ethnic heritage that's tied. That's literally the land that they come from, where Australia, it's a very different kind of history in that regard. And so I think in regards to Australia, there is possibility for certain types of immigration to work because that's what built the country, but it needs to be founded on that whole cultural values thing. But
I think it's just settlerism.
Yeah, is that just a different name for the same thing?
No, I think where Europe. See, the thing of it is, every civilization where they go, they take what is familiar to them through centuries of history with them.
Mhm.
They don't try to assimilate. They will always go to their kin. Like I can say this from living here and being abroad, is that people don't try to mesh with other cultures because they're not welcomed. Just like your instinctive reaction is, you are not like me. On some level, like when shit hits the fan, you're not going to go to people that share your values. You're going to go to people who look like you, because that's normal. That is just how a species survives. You're not going to go, hey, look, I'm a leopard. I have more in common with a bunch of cheetahs. No, you're going to hang out with the leopards because they share your spots, quite literally.
See, I have like a different view, right? Like, because for me, my culture is actually my religion, and I've attended my church in Japan, in in PNG, Papua New Guinea, as well as the US, New Zealand, and England, and so I've attended my church, right, in vastly different cultures, like in terms of ethnicities and the background, but the culture of the church is 100% consistent. These are my people. I feel it, and it's the same, even if they're speaking another language and I'm in Japan, right? And that's where, from my own experience, I feel culture, like when you embrace a unified culture of ideals that you all are living towards in unison, that can actually transcend race. That's my experience.
I feel like you may be there. You think that because you're a visitor there. I think if you were to live there, you might feel differently.
I mean, I was in Japan for several months, attending church and stuff, and the members there, it was the same church culture. It kind of surprised me. I was expecting it to be different, and it wasn't, because the culture of my church, I'm not sure. Like there is a unified doctrine which leads to unified practices, which becomes very, very consistent across the board. I don't think it would be maintained in other churches where there's a lot more liberal interpretation of scripture and other things like that. But my church has a very firm, structured doctrine that this is it. These are the practices. These are the standards. This is what we're aiming for. And like I said, my experience is that it is the same culture, regardless of where I've ever attended church.
I feel like if Japan had like a certain religious culture, if you brought a bunch of Europeans there, my feeling would be you were just trying to essentially conquer them through cultural assimilation.
Who says we're not?
Yeah, but see, that's my point. Is like I just
religion is like the whole purpose of the church is to supplant people's culture with the culture of the church. That is the whole point of it. That's the point of religion.
But my point is that the religion is tied. Religion is a culture, and it is tied to a people. As well, like every flavor of like Christianity in Europe is quite different. And you see this in the practice of the state.
My experience has been different to that. It has not been tied to a biological.
You did just admit it's for conquest and conquer purposes, by the way. So I'm wanting you to explain that one away.
When I say that, that was me being hyperbolic. But the ultimate goal is
sure.
not through force, but the ultimate goal is to supplant someone's ethnic culture, traditional culture with the culture of the church, because I honestly believe it is superior. It will lead to greater happiness.
Yeah, but that's superior according to you. Like you think this is what you make happen. And so if you go there,
objectively superior, absolutely. The greatest culture on earth, that is leads the greatest outcomes and superior to any other is the culture of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. 100%.
Yeah, but that's your opinion,
and it's objectively true.
Yeah, but it's like it's not objective. It's objective to your value system.
Man, we might have to have another discussion. But look, no, this is where I'm happy to show my bias on it, because I admit it is a bias, right?
Yes.
But I think it's a good bias. I genuinely do believe.
When you say objectively superior, what is your objective metric?
Well, I believe in objective morality to begin with, and objective truth. And based on objective truth and objective morality, I feel this church follows those practices far more truthfully and honestly than any other church in the world. That's the reason why I'm a member of this church, because I believe it is the superior church.
Okay, so if you go with objective values, if someone had a different God but the same values, would you object to that?
Actually, not as much. Like that. That's leads to an interesting discussion where if the practices are actually almost identical, okay, the interpretation becomes less significant. This is where the Latter-day Saints actually diverge a bit outside of creedal Christianity, where creedal Christianity believes that you must believe in, say, the Trinity, the creeds that are established. Otherwise, you are therefore not a true Christian. Where we believe what's vastly more important is those who follow and live the teachings of Jesus Christ. That is what is actually the true manifestation of your Christianity and your belief in Christ, not the way you profess or define what type of being he is. It's important, but nowhere near as important as actually living the teachings. The end results. I appeal to scripture in this, where Christ literally says, not everyone who saith unto me, Lord, Lord, will enter into the kingdom of my Father, but those who do it the will of my Father. What is the first great commandment? The first great commandment isn't a commandment that you must believe God and Jesus Christ are the same entity or believe in the correct Jesus. First great commandment is to love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, mind, and strength. And the second is like unto it, love the Lord, of thy neighbor as thyself. And as Christ then said, if you love me, keep my commandments. The most important thing that Christ taught was keeping the commandments and following his teaching. Sorry, that's a soapbox I can get onto all day, mate. But to answer your question, living the teachings and the practices is more important than actually the belief. And I believe that is also the greater manifestation of what the culture is as well.
Yeah, okay, there you go. I suppose that's a good note to end on.
All right, thanks, mate. I'll wrap up this super chat. I think we kind of answered that one. And then we have Gilly Guy 52, $5 says the difference is Christianity. Everyone else struggles without it, and the West is unraveling after its rejection. Islam, conversely, ruins everything. Well, we kind of talked a little bit about that at the beginning. I'm more on that side, where I think Christianity is very, very crucial to the development of like bettering society.
You've replaced Christianity with the worship of the state. Like that's that you need.
Yeah, thank goodness.
Separation of church and state is really bad.
I think this is, well, here's the thing. This is the last note on tribalism, right? Is if people are inherently tribal, they need a tribe that teaches the correct values. Otherwise, they will latch onto one that doesn't, and it leads to disaster. And when you take away religion, what's the tribe that people more often latch onto? The state.
I was going to say money.
Money. Well, that's another one, actually. That's a valid one.
Yeah.
Right.
You liked one of my quotes. My other one I think you might like is you are made to worship, and your choices are pleasure, money, or God, or rather impulse, money, or God. And if you don't pick the latter, you'll worship the former.
And this gets us onto an interesting subject. Maybe I'm out of time. My family are waiting. But the church that I'm a part of actually utilizes certain practices that are like encourage positive tribalism, and it leads to good results. But it's a whole nother subject. But I think that's actually a really good point to end off on. Yeah, I agree that people are tribal by nature, right? And I'm not sure humans will ever overcome it. So it should be utilized in a way that leads to the best outcomes. And for me, that is my church. 100%.
I'd say in our timeline, it tends to be conquest and conquer. That's historically what it's been. But now it's not bad because it might lead to bloodshed. Like, yeah, well, constantly like trying to replace me through consumerism is not exactly something I favor either.
I actually wasn't paying too much. What leads to conquest and conquer for you?
No, I would say conquest and conquer tends to be how humans have always moved and worked, because they take their culture with them. And if you forego that, another culture will just do it. But they'll do it through displacement. I
would think, yes, it doesn't have to always be through violence, but yeah, like when I say like the purpose of the church is to supplant, the culture with what we feel is a superior one, it is technically a form of conquest. Like, it's a soft one. It's not through violence, but that is kind of what's happening. Yeah, I agree.
It's through propaganda.
Yes. Well, it depends what your definition is by propaganda.
Getting someone to think a certain way.
See, to me, that's just persuasion. When I hear propaganda, I think people who are willing to do immoral acts just to like lie and stuff like that, misrepresent truth to push an ideology. That's what.
Okay, put it this way: do you think Rocky IV is propaganda, like pro-America propaganda?
Okay, good point. Like,
it's not bad.
Yeah, it's like
it's entertaining. It's good because it's against communism. Like if you're against communism, you don't think that's bad propaganda. You think it's entertaining because it's good propaganda. It shows like the American will is superior to the Soviet one.
So I guess it would, in my mind, different use of the word propaganda, because propaganda has always been used in such a negative, and I get annoyed because
I don't like the thing either, because propaganda to me is just persuasion to getting you to think a certain way. It doesn't mean it's negative.
In that perspective, I would agree.
Yeah, but people tend to associate anything bad always with the Germans. It's literally our entire thing is like everything is bad because Germany did it once and went overboard with it. It's like,
well,
please stop. This is not like
have you seen their swords during the Holy Roman Empire? Messers were friggin' amazing. Kriegsmesser. Got one on my shelf. The Germanic peoples of medieval period, they were based. You know that there was like a legal standard for many people to own weapons. Like you were legally required to because you were part of the local militia. Isn't that awesome?
That's Chad. Yeah. I like the what's written on the executioner's sword. It's there was something like something about granting you were giving them this death to grant them eternal life. Oh God, I should look at the phrase now.
That goes hard. But hey, man, I actually do need to get going. Need to wrap it up. But mate, thanks for letting me pick your brain a bit and talk about some of this stuff.
No problem.
Yeah. And anything you want to mention as we're wrapping up?
No, I may have to do a video on the current machinations with Maduro. I imagine I'm going to piss off a lot of people.
I think you will.
And although I will say I want to do something slightly different, because I feel like if you can watch people that are much more in tune to the political side, people like Oren McIntyre is a good example, because I know he did like an hour-long breakdown with sort of the reality of the statecraft behind it. My main thing is just that I have noticed when it comes to sort of conspiracy theories and beliefs, people will literally just believe what they already think is true. Like, for example, if you think there's something with the Israelis involved and you see some shit, you're going to go, yeah, that's the reason for that. If you think it's because of more oil, because that's what the regime is chasing, you're going to gravitate towards that. Like, the facts don't matter as much as what you already think is plausible.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. People believe more predominantly what they want to believe. Facts be damned. And
yeah. Mine is America has tried this multiple times and it's always been a shit show. So my reaction was, oh God, you're going to try this again? You've never had it successfully done.
Didn't they do it successfully with Japan?
Not really. They didn't occupy Japan.
Yeah, but they imposed
certain.
Yeah, but then they imposed many, legal practices that had to, run accordingly. And
they got nuked.
Them. Yeah, they got big.
I wouldn't, but that's not really regime change. All of their culture is still there.
No, but their culture shifted drastically.
Yeah.
And I think there are some examples.
Yeah, but good when you're not running their government.
Well, I don't know how America's going to be doing it. If they are going to try.
I hope Trump attacks Greenland. I really do.
Oh, he's going to buy it. Didn't you hear that? He announced that he wants to purchase it.
Yeah, I'm not really sure how that's going to work because the whole of Europe has been like, no, fuck off. This is one step too far. And if he does, that means the end of NATO. And I very, very much want NATO to dissolve and Europe to just go, oh, look, we're no under the Yankee thumb. We can now actually just like do our own shit. And the best case scenario is Germany realigns with Russia and we can end this crap of like buying unbelievably expensive LSG and Europe can actually not be as gay. And you can actually lie with Russia for once.
It's too big of a topic and I got to get going, mate. So time to sign off. So say goodbye, everyone. Catches.
Cheers.
And we should be signing off now.